And we live. What's up, everybody? Office hours, Monday, January 6th. About that time. Time to do a little bit of office hoursing, I guess. Yeah, how big of a delay are we on? That big? Yeah, it is. This feels like it's like a 30-second delay. Whatever. We'll figure it out. What's going on, everybody? We'll let everybody trickle in right now. I'm going to go for about an hour. And then I need to take some Christmas lights down because it's not Christmas anymore. Although, kind of wish it was. Minus the flu, I guess. That sucked. Please post link to Josh. You don't even have to scroll up more than like 5 posts. So today, plan of attack for me is more of a journey, a personal journey, than an office hour session. The last time we did one of these bad boys worked out tremendously, and I had a great day. So I'm hoping that works again. But I want to take a look at a couple small slates, 4 and 5 gamers, and see if there's anything I can do just to make my process a little bit different. I feel like I'm not getting enough unique combinations of lineups on a short slate, and I'm running out a lot of lineups that have a lot of similarity with each other, which I want to have a high concentration of a small amount of people, but I want more variability in those lineups. So we need to see how we get to that point. Let's see. Questions coming in. What do you think of a fade of Cantor? He's not. What do you mean a fade of Cantor? Why would I care about a fade of Cantor? Enes Kanter is projected for 3% ownership right now. Seems like 97% of the industry is fading him. Do you put limits on max from one team? Does it change with the size of the slate? I don't. Whatever is the default in Fantasy Cruncher is what I leave it at. Yeah, if anybody has any questions, get them in. Feel free to drop them in. I'm certainly going to be taking questions, but I am going to be digging into small slates on the back end. But let's let some people get in here. I'm sure some people are still watching Manny's stream, which was entertaining. I was watching. Shout out, Manny. Oh, man. Sorry, this is was I mean about Cantor there? My bad. So I grabbed you guys see everything, right? Yeah. So I grabbed 4 or 5 game slates from the past 2 weeks. And I just want to take a look and see what the people that are entering 150 lineups are doing. Sort of the concentration of how many lineups they're getting into the cash, how big the player pools are. Every slate's going to be different, but I'm hoping that we can see at least some trends. Best value on tonight's slate, Thad Young. T. McBee knows what's what. If I already entered lineups and there's big news that comes out, how do I recrunch and substitute the crunches in DK? You recrunch the same way that you crunched the previous time, and then you download your CSV of your entries on DraftKings and delete the lineups and paste in the new ones. If you want to have a quarter of your lineups with Enes Kanter on a 9-game slate today, have at it. Assume you don't really want to speak on this, but just wondering, is there an effective way to stop what happened on DK this weekend? Online poker monitor IPs could check for connections between lineups, but they all seem a bit easy to work around if DK didn't start enforcing the rules. There's not really anything for me to say. There's absolutely no way to stop it. That's it. The fact that this is still getting talked about is ridiculous. There's nothing else to talk about. It is about as cut and dry as it seems. It's not news. It's not new. And I don't know. I don't have anything else to say. No need to step on Manny's stream right now while he's saying the exact same thing. It's not going anywhere, guys. You weren't going to win the millie either. Anyway, so it doesn't matter. Let's dig into some of these. Can you explain what happened? I don't play DK. It has nothing to do with where you play. 300 lineups for 2 people. No overlap. In other news, sky's blue. I'm not going to get all butthurt about this one. Let's take a look at some of these slates. So, 150 maxers is what I want to know. This was January 5th, so it's a 4-game slate. Better question is, how does DK respond to this? Hopefully they just ignore it, like they do for everything else. And it'll just go away, like everything else does. All right, so 150 maxers are in. And again, since I've already forgot, 4-game slate. Range of player pool. 49 at the top. We'll say 27 at the bottom. That's 150 lineup train. Been down that road before. Anyway, sorry, chat got me. All right, we're looking at 27 to 49. Let's see, the Friday fadeaway from the 27th is a 5-gamer. We're looking at 68 to 22. Less guys on the 5-gamer. Interesting. Is there a way to see how many people are max entering the NBA baller? Seems like most aren't, but not sure how to check. There are no CSVs for Yahoo after the fact, so you can scroll through, you can build a scraper or scroll through every single entry. All right, let's see, the decade ender. So this is going to be the 31st, I'm guessing. Yes. 4-gamer. We're going 65 to, those are errors, 16. Okay. So we're seeing a little bit of a pattern. New Year's toast. $65 to $23. Okay. So we're seeing the range of basically a very, very concentrated player pool on a 4-game slate at, let's say, let's just say 8 teams on a 4-gamer, and we'll say that the minimum is a 32 man player pool. It's obviously a little bit lower than that, but we're talking about 4 guys per team, basically. All the way up to 50s and 60s, where we're talking about pretty much anybody that's projected for any sort of viable minutes. So there's that. I think that's pretty reasonable. I would rather be near the bottom of that number than the top. I think it's probably a bit too difficult to try to figure out. Like, let's look at, and this is more my personal opinion. I don't think that there's a right answer here. Like, I Slewfoot you played 65 guys here. Adam played 53. These are people that can get to the same sort of answer in many different ways. Like, let's look at I Slewfoot you here and the player usage. So all the way up to 60% CJ McCollum on a day where CJ McCollum was 24% owned. Vooch was the chalk at 46. So he stayed there. The difference is 1 share of Troy Brown, 1 share of Mitchell Robinson, 1 share of Gary Payton, 2 Bates Diop, 2 Gary Trent, 2 Ilyasova. Just all of these trickles of players. I'm not so sure that I want that on a short slate. What I want is probably something closer to, well, I'd say Papa Gates, but I might have to check Chipotle too. Like 37 from Tom was probably spot on. Giant Squid is probably going to be the one that I'll look out most here, so let's go to 35. So then we're seeing there. Okay, there we go. That works. So what we're seeing is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 guys in 10 lineups or less. I Slewfoot you had, okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 30, 31, 32, 33, 34. 34 guys in 9 lineups or in 10 lineups or less. So right away, I prefer Giant Squid's thought process here in that I want to get a heavy concentration of a small amount of guys in as many unique combinations as possible. That's my goal. So let's try to hash this out and see the major differences in each lineup. Are those actually the same? Okay, so this is looking like 2 uniques. We're looking at these 2 lineups here. Peyton the same, Culver the same, LeBron the same, Covington the same. Napier the same, Bridges the same. So it's Marcus Morris, Randall, or Mitchell Robinson, Booker. So we're seeing 2 uniques on that spot. Which is good to know. Only 1 lineup of Giant Squids in this contest had the full 50K, which I think is kind of interesting. Josh, why does it matter what other 150 people are doing? Most of those people aren't profitable. It matters because I don't need to look up the strategy of a guy that entered 2 lineups in here. That's not going to get me anywhere. I need to be able to compare like to like. I'm playing 150, so I want to know what everybody else playing 150 is doing. Let me circle back here. Is there any reason to consider ownership when picking a cash lineup? Would you always try to run the optimal, or would you try to calculate a target score for a cash line, find the highest chances of hitting it? Yes, you should be considering ownership while picking a cash lineup. If you have a guy projected for 30 fantasy points and a guy projected for 29.9, one of those guys is 40% owned and the other is 2, I want the guy that's 40% owned. I'm not trying to win the 50-50. I'm just trying to pass the cash line. Do I ever stack positionally or game-wise? Nope. I mean, not like on purpose. I heard it's harder to beat high-stakes DFS than it is poker. I have no idea. Don't know anything about poker. I mean, I know how to play poker, obviously, but I don't know anything about the poker industry. I don't know. I don't even know what the rake is or anything. Do you ever calculate how many lineup combinations are possible with certain constraints? No. What's the highest amount that Squid left on the table? $600. Which I think is kind of crazy. Okay, so Will, I'm just going to talk this one out loud. Any math wizards tell me the probability that a colluding team with 300 entries can take the Millie Maker? Does it give them a significant advantage over the field? I mean, it gives you an extra 150 entries, so it's whatever that is out of however many there are. There is a very, very slight marginal increase to your chances of winning that contest because you have 300 lineups and not 150. And because you're building those lineups so that they don't duplicate. It is essentially irrelevant. You would never see that be relevant. If it's only 300, you would never see that be relevant over the course of an NFL season. You probably wouldn't see it be relevant over the course of a lifetime. Is there a correlation between player pool size and profitability? No idea. Is there a way to see how all the pros late swapped if they did? No, there's not. Oh my God. I hope there's more of that message. I would assume Alex doesn't alter his own projections, but how does he consistently win when the majority of us use the same projections? Is it all based on stuff he puts into FC rules and whatnot? He understands lineup construction and inner lineup correlation better than, well, anybody that's ever going to watch our shows, pretty much. Let's not forget, this has nothing to do with the NBA. This is an optimization problem. And he understands the math better than everybody else. Okay, so giant squid using 2 uniques. I like it. I personally like the player pool size. The question is, what are the caps? And it's pretty clear here that at the very least, they are 100%. Got to Jarrett Culver, 94% of lineups. So I see that. And that makes perfect sense. My guess, for me personally, is that I am being too narrow with my ownership caps on a small slate, and that I need to increase them. But let's look at a completely different slate altogether, and we'll see where we end up. Giant Squid not play this slate? Nope, there he is. 36, okay. The correlation of players in each individual lineup and the correlation of one lineup to another lineup. That is what I'm talking about there, guys. Giving yourself combinations of lineups that don't overlap with themselves a lot. You're not just playing against everybody else. You want to be able to create a wide casted net for whatever you're doing. No matter how narrow your player pool is, you don't want to overlap with yourself too much. Hence unique lineups. All right, so Giant Squid on this particular slate got up to 68% DeAndre Ayton. So at the very least, it appears there are no caps. Again, short slate didn't hit 50K. Now, I think that this is very relevant on DraftKings, given the lack of positional nature. It seems likely that he's trying to not dupe at 50K. Is this the 5-gamer? Is this the 4-gamer? Let's see if that happens here. Yeah, 49.9. On a short slate here, Giant Squid is absolutely setting a cap to 49.9. So that's good to know. Highest owned guy, 82% Harden, 70% Rondé Hollis Jefferson. Very minimal amount of guys in 10 lineups or less. This is something that I'm going for sure. The question is, how do I increase my pre-lock lineup value, I guess is sort of the most generic way to describe that. Let's see if we've seen any sort of change in uniques. Harden, Burks, RHJ, Chris, Ibaka. So this is one unique. Only difference in this lineup right now is Draymond Green and Damian Lee, which I think is very interesting. Very, very interesting. How can you avoid the Sharks when the NFL or another sport is not a way to distract from the NBA slate? You can't. I mean, enter different contests? So the question is, how do I run a crunch with my current settings to stop from having this much concentration? So my issue is likely that I have too much at the top. Did I play? I don't know if I played any DraftKings on the 31st. Let me see if I did. When's the last time I played DraftKings on a short slate? General site. DraftKings ad. I did not play on the 31st. I played on the 1st and the 2nd. How big was the New Year's Day slate? Because I got slaughtered. How big was the New Year's Day slate? 4 games. Okay. So I'm in some sort of tiny mini max. I'm gonna assume it's this one. I got bodied. Is this the John Isaac slate? Yes, it is. Cool. DFS beer pack. What's up, man? What's up, Mark? I don't agree with your first premise, but ultimately, I expect it to have no effect on the industry. Okay, so let's see where I'm at now. How many players did I have? I used 30 on this particular slate. This is January 1st. So let's filter down. So that's the New Year's toast. Okay, so I used 30, which would have been the second lowest amount, not counting Ricky D's train. That was obviously unintentional. Or not necessarily obviously unintentional, but I'm almost positive it was unintentional. So I would have had the second lowest amount there. Now, if we go back and look at the bottom, I had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 guys below 10. So I'm cool with that piece. Now, I can't just look at like profitability numbers here because I'm going to look like garbage one way or the other. I had John Isaac play 2 minutes of this game in 58% of my lineups. I'm not so worried about having too much of somebody in that day going wrong. I'm more worried about if I'm creating lineups that aren't of a particular quality, in that they all sort of just look the same, and I'm coming down to just, I don't want to say a sea of 2v2s, but I want it to be better than that. I think it's interesting how many lineups that I got at the full 50K, but it's not as if I duped a ton there on a 4-gamer. I played a lot of unique 50K lineups that didn't have a dupe. But at the same time, it's something to be aware of. How many dupes did Squid have just in general? One lineup on that entire day was duped, whereas I had significantly more than that. I had 53 duped. So error number 1, I think, is pretty abundant. Maybe not necessarily error, but quick way to not get duped so much is staring me in the face. So the question then becomes, where is my true overlap coming? Like, so that's a 3v3 on the DiVincenzo lines. Ross, Whiteside, Mello, Fournier, Gorgeous Dong, Covington. So I see it as a situation where I don't truly hate what I'm getting here in comparison to someone like Giant Squid. So let's see how much he had to his 12th highest owned guy. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. 26%. I had 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 30. So I'm even higher in my concentration. I'm even more narrow than I should be. Not should be. I'm more narrow than he was. The question then is, how do I maintain heavy exposure in a slightly flatter form? A couple additional combos of your Dwight Howards, Ricky Rubios, Keelan Martins, Gorgeous Dongs. That's the question. And I'm not entirely sure what that answer is. It could be as easy. Like, I don't get the sense that changing my salary max to something like 49.9 on a short slate is going to matter all that much to my personal lineup diversification. It's obviously going to get me duped less, but that's not really changing the correlation of individual plays in my lineup. I'm guessing that groups would be more helpful. However, I think that there are opportunities for that to do more harm than good, depending on what those groups look like. I had 4 lineups with 5-man Orlando stacks. Augustine, Ross, Fournier, Isaac, Fultz. Let's see. What's the biggest stack usage that he had? He had 15 lineups of 4-man Portland stacks, and he had 22 4-mans. I had 36 4-mans and 4 5-mans. Probably want to minimize that. All of mine were coming from Orlando, so I think that I can probably get a slight bit of additional diversification in that regard, where I still have an overwhelming majority of Orlando Magic players, but not necessarily the same concentration clear across the board. That seems like a pretty easy fix. The question is, does that come in from ownership caps individually? Does that come from the way that I am setting my personal ownership caps? I don't know. I'm not entirely sure. I guess I could pull this slate up and rewind, huh? Squid spread 50% of what you have on AD to other spots, LeBron, and dedicated more of his large exposure to value there. Then looks like he mixed and matched within 20 to 30% exposure ranges on mid to high dollar guys. How much did you each have LeBron and AD together? That's a good question. I assume very little. Yeah. I had 11 out of 150 with LeBron and AD. He had 8. So pretty comparable there. I don't want to say that my issue is having too aggressive of a concentration of the Magic, because okay, that may be true, and it probably is true. However, I don't want to just jump to that conclusion because John Isaac had a bad game because he got hurt, because I don't think that helps me. But that seems like I can lower that from 4-player stacks to 3-player stacks if need be, and just get some more unique combinations other than just saying, this is what I need to happen on this particular day. The question is, how do I go about that? I'm not going to be able to backtrack this one at all that much, because of the way that my sorting process works. But we'll at least be able to see where my exposure caps were. So I had 38 guys in my player pool that day. Isaac's injury changed everything about the profitability of that slate. I'm not necessarily worried about the profitability, but more about the makeup of my lineups. I don't care at all how I did from a profitability standpoint. That's not really what I'm looking at here. So player caps looked something like that. Terrence Ross was the max at 49%. Everybody was pretty concentrated of the guys that I like. And you can pretty much assume that my exposure caps are in order of who I want to have the most. So the question is, how do I get less of a concentration of Orlando Magic stacks? Obviously, changing the amount of players per team is a viable option. Groups would be a viable option. Setting, let's just, for poops and ha-has. See, this is not going to be, I'm not going to be able to run this the way that I want to, because even if I set that to 150, this is not how I generate lineups. I can end up with a lot more than 4. How much Terrence Ross did I have? Yeah, 75%. So this crunch won't matter all that much. But just for poops and ha-has, we'll take a look at it. How'd I do in the New Year's toast? Yeah, would have got slaughtered. As expected. It's exactly what you would expect when John Isaac is going to be just the straight doo-doo. So, Josh, as I understand it, you're looking for fewer guys in the pool, thus raising exposure to all of the guys you have, but you also want uniqueness within that group of 150. Yes. Would it be crazy if you wanted a certain amount of exposure with both AD and LeBron in and then 50% without? Would it be better to do crunches, one with a group, one without? Yes. I wouldn't never think about it like that, but yes, that's how you would need to do it. Okay. So I wouldn't want to move this number because I think that's wrong. What I think the true issue would be is getting more variability in each particular lineup, which I assume is only going to be happening via randomness. Because I know that I was set to 3 uniques that day. But with increased randomness, isn't there a way to mathematically describe the uniqueness in Excel? Sort of? This feels like a scenario where I would be increasing randomness in a fairly large manner. Beat my old high score by 2. This must be the right way to do it. Sarcasm alert, guys. Sarcasm alert. So we got to 38 players. That's more than I actually used. Now what I would really want to do is bring up my archive files. But I don't keep them because I don't care. The question becomes, how do I end up with slightly less all in on one team in this regard? This is the spot where I think I am most incorrect. And extinguishing that giant 4-player stack number. That's a 4-man, that's 32 of 150 lineups. I'm curious where we'd land on those exposures if you cut uniques to 2, bump randomness, and add a guy or 2 to the player pool in each position. I'm less worried about adding the guy to the player pool. What I think is sort of the issue is something like, where can I show this the easiest? Like this is shooting guard, for example. I don't see a scenario where I need to add anybody to the pool. I think I've got plenty of options here, given the amount of combinations you can get to on DK. But what the real issue is likely that so many of the top values for me, Isaac at power forward, Terrence Ross at small forward. I mean, Vooch is my third best center, and it's close. I'm getting a DJ Augustine, my top valued point guard. The issue, I believe, is creating more variability in the projections. The question becomes, do exposure caps, how much do my exposure caps dictate the problem here? So we can see that we ran this crunch, exposure cap of 45 on Culver, although sorting by value is going to be the easiest metric here. My 4 highest exposure caps are still the 4 highest guys that showed up in crunches. The lowest guys, Isaiah Thomas, RJ Barrett, Rondo, Eric Bledsoe. If I'm sorting these exposure caps in order, I'm not coming anywhere near these bottom guys. So I am getting all of the top, which makes me think that I need to soften my ownership caps a little bit. Bringing this area down slightly to raise this. Not even necessarily raise that, but bringing that high down to create more unique combinations. I think that I'm being too wide given the amount of lineups that I'm crunching for a smaller slate. I think that's the issue. I think I need slightly lower ownership caps, particularly to the high end, so that I'm forcing in additional options. So that when I export 1,000 lineups into my workbook for evaluation, I have more combinations that aren't just, here's 4 guys from the Magic. The question is, can that be done? Should that be done with randomness instead of changing that? So let's look at it like that. The first crunch that I ran here had 10% randomness on everyone, which is really forcing everybody at the top, getting very little of the guys at the bottom. Second crunch I ran had 50% randomness, starting to get a little bit more. For poops and ha-has, see what 100% randomness looks like here. Certainly thinning out the top. I got less Isaac. That's great. Certainly increasing here. We're seeing the change from 13, 13, 13, 1, 13 to 17, 13, 19, 9, 12. We're definitely getting more of the guys at the bottom and slightly more combinations. Now, I'm also likely lowering the average projected score for sure. Yeah, I agree, T. McBee. The highest exposed guys are the essentials. Yeah, they are the guys that I want to end up with a ton of. But maybe it's a slow trickle. Instead of having 80, it's 75, and that's 4 different guys, and it's just the slight boost from the bottom. 100% randomness feels like it's going to be wildly incorrect. Although we've looked at this in the past, and let's see. On a 35 projected guy, 100% randomness, it's going to take me anywhere from 19 to 58. So it's essentially fully random. But maybe that's not the problem on that sort of slate, given where my ownership numbers are. Because I'm still going to get a lot of my top guys. My highest projected value guy was Terrence Ross. He's still getting himself really close to my cap. DiVincenzo, second best point per dollar guy, smashing into the cap. Augustine comes down lower. One position, not entirely surprising. Not as many places to get into a lineup. Culver, closer to the cap, close to the cap, close to the cap. Cap, essentially the cap. Big drop off to John Isaac. Don't know why. It seems awesome in hindsight. Big drop off of Evan Fournier as well. Kind of interested in a lot of randomness on a 4-gamer or a 5-gamer. Because I can handle figuring out the lineups that I need to play after I generate 1,000 of them. The question becomes, am I getting enough of the bottom? Because I think I do a pretty good job of culling my player pool. I'm not worried about having more than 38 guys here. I think I have enough combinations. But if I have a 38 player pool, lowest exposure cap is 12% Noah Vonleh. Lowest I got of anybody is still 3% Isaiah Thomas in this spot. If I switch randomness to 10%, which is what I'd be going back to from the original crunch, I assume there are going to be a few guys that I don't get at all here. Let's find out. See? Nothing here. What I'm going to... Actually, let's bump this. Let's run the full 1,000. I don't know how long this is going to take. But I'm expecting... I would expect everybody to show up at some point in time. But we are going to get a lot of single-digit guys. And I think that's where I'm going wrong. Look, we still haven't gotten RJ Barrett, Isaiah Thomas, or Chris Middleton. We're up to 300 lineups. We have Giannis in 1, 2%, 3%, 4%, 5%. Boink, boink, boink. I don't even think I need the full 1,000. I mean, this is just not going to get there. I think it's very clear from running this crunch at 10% randomness, given where my ownership caps are, that I am not getting enough of the bottom of my player pool to give me different combinations. We're seeing that after, even just at 400 lineups right here. I am not getting enough of this bottom section, given where the caps are. So let's see the impact if I change this to 50% randomness right now. How quickly do we get to a bigger spread? All right, so everybody is already at 50%. Everybody is already in a lineup at least once. But we're not really seeing an impact to the guys at the top. These guys are still getting up into the 30s and 40s, which could allow them to get into the 70s and 80s. Can you see what your top 150 from each of those crunches looks like? Not sure what you mean, man. So we're still in the sync. We're still a little low here. But I really do think that I'm not using enough randomness on a short slate. We're up to 400 lineups, and we're getting there without any real impact to the guys at the full top. They're all showing up 20s, high 20s, 30s, 40s. I think that by already shrinking my player pool to 38 players, I can afford to be significantly more aggressive with my ownership or with my randomness. This is now 100% randomness. 100% FC Pro randomness. Key piece here. And we're getting even the bottom guys getting closer and closer to 10% or so. But still getting upwards of 30s, and even Terrence Ross still getting into the 40s. Now, it's possible that I can do that 100. Let's see what the impact is if I only have this on 2 uniques. I think that by shrinking my player pool manually on my own, or automatically on my own, but manually on my own, that I can afford to be more aggressive with the lineups that I generate. Yeah, so the 3 uniques is still working fine. It is keeping these guys a bit lower. So I don't mind the 3 uniques. I can still get there given my caps. Shouldn't randomness be a function of their standard deviation and projection and average relationship? If you're only doing everything in Fantasy Cruncher, probably. I'm just trying to generate lineups as fast as I can. Yeah, so I think that I'm fine still having 3 uniques. I'm thinking that I want to increase my randomness on smaller slates so that I can make sure I am getting enough options of the guys that I have selected for my player pool that I'm not necessarily getting. Again, I had 38 guys in my pool, but I didn't use 8 of them. So I cut down this entire slate from, what was the highest number of guys used in the biggest contest? I cut my player pool down from, let's say, 65, however many people that I Slewfoot you used, all the way to 38, and still didn't use 8 of those guys. That feels incorrect. If I'm going to cut that all the way down to 38, it's not that I feel that it's totally incorrect. I could see like 1 or 2 guys not making the cut after I sort, but based on the way that I had the randomness set up and where the caps were, I was basically not getting those guys. And that's not what I want to do. If I get them and then they don't sort into my lineups after the fact, that I can tolerate. But if I never gave myself the chance to get better lineups into Excel, that is my problem. Tomorrow is a 6-gamer. I wish it were slightly smaller. What do the slate sizes look like on for tonight? For like after hours. Do we have a 4-gamer by any chance? Let me pull up DraftKings. I'm not playing on DK tonight. I'm only playing on FanDuel because I'm live. We've got a 2-game turbo, got a 3-game night slate that starts at 8:30. I might have to take a look at that. Yeah, T McBee making a very good point here. There's an important note on this. You're able to get over aggressive with your randomness and pushing exposures around your pool because you've already cut it down significantly. And your constructions are going to generally be following a good through line because you've removed bad options. If people just drop 100% onto a full player pool, they're going to end up with some wacky shit. Yeah, that's 100% true. Because I am narrowing my player pool down, I can afford to get amounts of all of those guys because they've already essentially been vetted. I am not it's already removing guys that I think have very low probabilities of reaching a particular target for that day, or these guys aren't getting owned either. Did I play the 3-game FanDuel last night? No, I didn't. I haven't played since Friday. So this was a learning experience for me to dig in. Let's see the schedule. We could take a look back at this. So 6 games. Not going to be Wednesday. Bingo. Thursday, January 9th, 4-game slate. This will make for a very nice test case. It's also possible that I get involved in like a turbo slate or an early slate for Wednesday the 8th. I'll be producing the golf show that night. So normally I'm asleep before I can play any of these slates. But Thursday will be a nice test case to see how I can flatten out my exposure slightly, given the way that I generate my lineups. Adam Moulton, does this mean higher randomness is better on small slates or is only correlated because of your exposure caps? Please do not take anything away as better or worse. This is just me trying to make an adjustment to the way that I have everything set up. Nothing that I said should be taken as this is the way to do this. There are obviously pros involved here. Excuse me, let me cough. There are obviously pros here playing significantly more players than I had in my player pool. Adam that night played 53 guys. I had 15 less guys available to be a part of Fantasy Cruncher. So you need to be aware that what I'm talking about works specifically for what I'm trying to do. Curate a significantly smaller player pool and get to as much of the guys that I think are absolutely the best as much as possible while limiting the amount of lineups that just simply look the same over and over and over again. And that's what was happening with having a third of my lineups be 4-man Orlando stacks. All right, let's pack it in here, folks. Thank you for joining me on this lovely office hours. If you have further questions, feel free to drop them into Slack. I'll be around for most of the rest of the day. Plus, you get Deeper Diving live before lock tonight. And I said it earlier today that it was Adam and Lofty coming up on Deeper Dive. That is not true. You're getting the boss man, Alex Baker. He is covering for Adam today, who is going to the Wizards game because they called him up to be the new power forward. Kidding, obviously. That's all I got, everybody. Good luck. Thanks for joining me. I'll be back again next Monday. We can take a peek and see how that Thursday slate looked. But good luck, guys. Later.